Okay. Thank Hashem. We'll enter every day. For learning, we should have some English immediately. Is this for me? Is this water? You get hooked on water? We're going to start on a Mishnah on Nun Vav Amud Beis. I'm Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, you see that on the bottom of 56b? It says Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says, Danti lifnei Rabbi Eliezer. I taught or judged. I learned in front of Rabbi Eliezer the following. When it comes to a bone, a human bone that's from a corpse, that's under the size that is at least the size of a barley. So that bone, if a person is under the same roof as it, the person doesn't become tamei. However, but if a person touches it, then he becomes so tamei that the Nazir would have to restart his count. He'd have to shave his head and restart. So what we're seeing is that the etzem kasa'ira, the bone, which is lenient, but nevertheless, by touching it, the person has to recount. He has to recount the Naziris. Revius dam is a kal v'chaimer. If the lenient thing a person has to recount, then the strict one, revius dam shematame adam ba'ayel, a revius of blood. A revius is a measurement of blood, which would make a person impure in a tent under the same roof. That means this is the stricter one. Is it not a kal v'chaimer? Is it not all the more so for shiori that a person would have to, that a Nazir would have to recount if he touched it? Truth is, he should have to recount even if he's in the same tent as it, right? It should be even more than that. Follow the kal v'chaimer. If a bone which doesn't give off impurity in a tent, but nevertheless through touching it, he becomes, the Nazir has to recount. So revius dam, which does give off impurity in a tent, for sure the Nazir should have to recount when he touches it. Well, and the rule was, we said in the Mishnah, that it's not a revius dam that he has to recount. It's a half a lug, which is double a revius, not a quarter. Revius is a quarter of a lug. We learned in the Mishnah it's a half a lug. So Rabbi Akiva is saying, I don't understand. I have a kal v'chaimer that tells me that it should be a revius. Amar Li, Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer is the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is a student of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua. He says, Maze Akiva, what is this, Akiva? Ain't done in kan kal v'chaimer. You can't learn the kal v'chaimer over here. We'll see. Because it's a tradition from Moshe, and they're mutually exclusive. You have a tradition, halacha Moshe Misinai, doesn't mix with a kal v'chaimer. You can't combine them. I came to Rabbi Yeshua. I told him this. Amali, so Rabbi Yeshua says, Yafa Marta, what you're saying is correct. But they already said that was the law. So that's, you can't, basically Rabbi Eliezer is correct as well. What you said is logical, but Rabbi Eliezer is correct. Okay. Here's the question. So apparently there's a kal v'chaimer here, and there's also a halacha Moshe Misinai. Question is, which one is which? The question goes like this. Etzem kasa'ira halacha revius dam kal v'chaimer. Etzem kasa'ira was the was the lenient one, the bone that's the size of the barley. That's going to be what's a kal v'chomer means. If a weak person can pick up 10 pounds, so a strong person could for sure pick up 10 pounds, right? That's the kal v'chomer. So I have the weaker one that has a certain stringency. And then I have the stronger one, for sure should have that stringency, right? So the etzem kasa'ira, which is the weaker one, that's the halacha. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring the stronger one, and I'm going to try to learn that a kal v'chomer from the halacha. Halacha means halacha Sinai, from the tradition. So if the bone that's the size of the barley, that was the halacha. Halacha that it gives off impurity through touching, and a nazir will have to shave. That another will have to restart his count. That's the halacha Sinai, that a bone the size of a barley will cause a nazir to restart. Revius dam kal v'chomer, and the revius of blood that should also cause the nazir to restart. That's the kal v'chomer, and the rule is ain't done in kal v'chomer. You can't learn it. Oy maybe it's a little different. Maybe the revius dam is the halacha. Maybe the fact that a revius dam gives up. Why did we say that the revius of blood is the stringency? Because we said a revius of blood causes contamination under the same roof. It's much stricter than the bone. The bone doesn't cause contamination on this. So, but where did we get that from? So we're saying that we're getting that from a halacha, which means a tradition. The revius dam is halacha. Ve'etzem kasa'ira, and the fact that the bone, the size of the barley, which through touching gives off the impurity through touching, and therefore from that will come out a kal v'chomer that if a revius of dam if etzem kasa'ira causes a nazir to restart his count, then for sure the revius dam should cause a nazir to restart. So if we would say that, being done kal v'chomer halacha, and you can't learn the kal v'chomer from the halacha. So basically the question is like this: where was the tradition? Is the tradition that the bone gives off impurity through touching, or is there tradition that the blood gives off impurity under the same roof if it's a revius? Which one was the tradition? Well, Tashma, come and listen. Etzem kasa'ira halacha. Bone the size of the barley, that was the halacha. The revius dam kal v'chomer, and the revius of blood is the kal v'chomer. Ain't done kal v'chomer halacha. What happened over here is like this. Taisvis spells it out a little bit. He says that, look, I really have a pasuk that would tell me a revius of dam. It says, I learn it from Nafshes Meis, that any soul of man shouldn't come to. We learn from that, those extra words, that it's referring to a revius of blood. So where do we get that the bone gives off impurity through touching? That would be the halacha. That's the tradition. Okay. Now we start the new parak. What is this, the 8th parak? Is this the last parak?
Yeah.
No, there's the 9th parak also. Okay. Goes like this. Shnei Nazirim. You have 2 Nazirim. Shamla Mechad. The person tells them, one of you definitely became tamei. I'm just not sure who it was, because maybe I was standing behind. I saw one of you, step over the corpse, and you're for sure tamei. I'm not sure which one it was. You're from the back, I couldn't tell. Something like that.
I mean, they all wore black hats and black
Strimals. Megalchen umevian carbon tama v'carbon tara. So, because one of them is tamei, and these are 2 nazirim, what's the rule by a nazir that's tamei? He has to restart his count. So he's going to have to shave his head and bring the sacrifice. They would bring a sacrifice first, right? So that was at the end. They would bring a sacrifice first. That was by the tara. They would bring a sacrifice first, and then he would shave his head. By the impure one, he would shave his head and then bring the sacrifice. Then, no, he would shave his head, wait 7 days, bring a sacrifice. Correct?
Yeah.
So he has to shave, bring the sacrifice, carbon tuma, and at the same time, he also has to bring a carbon tara because it could be his tar. Remember, there was a doubt here. One of them is tamei, one's tar. So one of them is going to have to bring a carbon tuma, one's going to have to bring carbon tara. So what do? Well, what they could do is like this. And they say the following. Now, Tosfos points out that when it says they say, it doesn't have to mean that they really say. It just means that they have to intend. Imanihu atame, he says like this: if I'm the one that was impure, so carbon tuma shali v'carbon tara shalach, then the sacrifice of tuma is for me, sacrifice for tar is for you. Imanihu atar, but if I'm the tar one, then carbon tara shali v'carbon tuma shalach. So they make like this condition. Whoever needs it, well, that's the one it should apply to. Okay, so far so good. Then they have to count 30 days, another 30 days. Remember, because with someone that's tamei, that was a nazir, he has to recount and do another 30 days afterwards. Now, only one of them really needs to do this. But whatever the case is, maybe in carbon tara, after the 30 days, they bring another sacrifice. And he says like this: if I was the one last month that was tamei, and I already brought a carbon tuma, so carbon tuma shali, the carbon tara shalach, and I brought the carbon tuma last time, and you brought the carbon tara. Well, if that's the case, was that carbon tara? See, this is my new carbon tara, because I already did the carbon tuma before you already did a carbon tara. This is mine. And if I was the one that was pure last time, carbon tara shali, the carbon tuma shalach, and last time, a month ago, I brought the pure sacrifice, and you brought the one that was the carbon of impurity. Is that carbon tarascha? Then this would be your sacrifice. Okay. Point out over here that, of course, you can bring sacrifices if it's a doubt. We're talking about that they brought chata sa'if. Chata sa'if, you are allowed to bring if it's a doubt. You just can't eat it. Okay. Now, Katani was taught in this Mishnah that Shnei Nazirim, you have two, sorry? Right. So they wait 30 days, bring two sacrifices, as if they're one's tummy, one's tar, and then they complete another 30 days, and then they bring one more sacrifice. But the one that was tummy last time has to bring one that's tar now. Right?
These guys are spending a lot of time.
Yeah, it gets complicated. So, someone else saw them and says, one of you became tummy, I'm not sure which one. So what did we say? We say that it's a doubt. And what do you do in a doubt? You have to treat it like either way. You have to treat it just in case it's this, just in case it's that. It says, V'amai, why do you have to treat it as a doubt? Kol safek tumah b'shus hayachid mehechi yalfin Allah. Where do we learn safek tumah? In Rishus hayachid. There's a doubt in a private domain. It's different than if there's a doubt in a public domain when it comes to impurity. We learn it from Saita. You have to wait about 10 days. See this again. We'll start Saita in 10 days.
The private domain is more severe. Right?
Yeah. By Saita we learn that Ma Saita Bayal V'Nevelas. There was the woman and the man that were secluded. Afkal Safek Tumah b'shus hayachid. Any other Safek Tumah in a private domain. When there's two people, we say that we suspect that maybe that's impure. We say that maybe something happened there that was not correct. If there's only two people there. However, Aval Hacha Shnei Nazirim B'Hai Dekoi Gabeim, but over here, there's two people, two Nazirim, plus the fellow that was watching them. Batlasa. If we have three. Havalei Safek Tum B'Shus Harabim. So 3 people already becomes a public domain. So we're not dealing over here public and private in Hilchos Shabbos. We're dealing public and private. If there would be 2 people secluded in a room, a man and woman, that would be considered the private. If there would be a 3rd person there, that would already be considered public. When it comes to this possible adulteress, right? The Saita. No, so what? No. You would say that nothing happened.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Family. With a little kid, someone underage.
It would depend probably on the age.
Is this idea of a collective problem unique to?
Tumah. It's interesting because it's a different sort of tumah. Tumah by the Saitas, Vihi Nitma, that she commits adultery. Over here it's tumah because they touch the corpse. But we say tumah has the same rules. All tumah has the same. If it's a doubt in a public domain, then we say that it's pure. If it's a doubt in a private domain, we should say that it's impure. Based on the Saita. A Saita in a private domain, which means there's only 2, her and the other fellow, we say is impure. If it's a public domain, we say that they're pure.
So it's known to be platonic friends. Or family share. No, I mean, we assume that if it's going to be improper, that's no doubt, right? What if there is a doubt? You know, these people are always together, they're colleagues.
So if the husband had already warned her,
But they're both married to somebody else.
not both, the woman's married. That would only be a site if the woman is married. The woman's married and the husband warned her, said, I don't want you to be secluded with this man. And then she's secluded. So then there was already reason to suspect. That's why the husband didn't warn her, then it would be a separate prohibition, but she wouldn't become a site.
I heard Mark go home and say this one. Sorry, I was like, collegial friendship.
So v'chol safek tumah b'shas rabim tzarich tar, and any safek tumah in a public place should be tar. We're asking, why does he have to bring the karban? Look, one of them here is not tamei.
Right.
One of them is. So there's a doubt. So the rule should be that no one should have to be tamei, because a doubt should be fine. B'shas rabim. There's 3 people there.
Isn't this analogous to someone with a disease today? That you don't know who has the disease, so you have to assume, this would assume that everybody's pure. But meanwhile, he's contaminating everybody else. So is the impure person, can he contaminate other people in this case? Like is he a public danger? To have
Right.
him talking?
Right.
What?
Okay. So let's take a look at the answer. Amar Rabba Bar Avuna.
All right.
Rabba Bar Avuna says by Marisi Tamashinizuk Beinechem that the person wasn't even there, the person that saw it. So therefore, it is considered a private place,
Oh.
and the person was just watching from far. He says, "I saw tumah that was thrown between you, or came basically." One of you came in contact with tumah, but I was somewhere else. I was watching from a distance. So therefore, it's considered a private area, and that's why we're being strict, and that's why they have to bring the carbon.
Keeping time.
Taisvis says over here. He asked an interesting question. See Taisvis by Marisi. One line in, it says Vim Taimar. If you're telling me that it's a Rishus HaYachid, the Gemara should continue with the question and say, what was the Gemara's first question? Why do they have to bring a carbon tumah? It's a public area. Safek tumah b'Rishus Harabim, a doubt of tumah and Rishus Harabim is pure. So what do you answer? That it's not a public area, it's a private area. It's a private area, so then they should each be bringing karbanos. The kol safek tumah b'Rishus Yachid, sarfin la truma. Then they're very tamei. It's not a doubt. Basically, the Gemara's question is, why are you considering it a doubt? Is it in the Rishus HaYachid or is it in the Rishus Harabim? If it's in the Rishus Harabim, they shouldn't be bringing the carbon tumas. The Gemara says, no, it's the Rishus HaYachid. So Taisha says, so then why are they even considering that maybe they're tar?
Yeah, 'cause there are two doubts here, right? There's a doubt whether it was public or private, and there's
No.
a doubt who it happened to.
No, this is doubt who it happened to. But the Gemara is saying that where it was is not a doubt. Either it was in Rosh Hashanah and then it should be pure. Either it's Rosh Hashanah, it should be tamei. So why are you bringing this doubtful carbon? This one says this, and he brings it, and he says that. And then the Taisvus answers. You see this via Shleimer. You can only study from Saita. You can only derive from Saita something that's possible. Notice the Gemara doesn't, at this point, the Gemara doesn't say, so why does she have to bring a carbon? Why does this person have to bring a carbon tara? They're for sure tamei, right? The Gemara doesn't say that. The reason is because one of them is for sure tar. When do I say that a suffix tamei b'shus hayachid is tamei? That's only if it's possible that the person's tamei. But over here, if I want to say that they're both tamei, that's impossible. It's contradictory. One is tamei, one isn't. So I can't consider them both tamei when that's not possible. So therefore, I can't derive it from Saita. If that's the case, Taisus continues and he asks the opposite. He says, if that's the case, if I can't learn from Saita, that's something that's impossible, then why the Gemara suggest that maybe they should both be tar, learning from Saita that if it's a public area, they should both be tar. But that's impossible because one of them is for sure tamei. The Gemara, so Taisus answers that Safek Tamei b'shus hayachid and Safek Tamei b'shus rabim are not on an equal balance. Safek Tamei b'shus hayachid, I learned from Saita. And it has to be possible. Otherwise, I don't learn from Saita. Safek Tamei b'shus rabim, I don't learn from Saita. Safek Tamei b'shus rabim is just, since I don't learn from Saita, so I just give them each their own original status, which was they were both pure. And so I'm just going to assume that they're both pure. I'm not learning from Saita that they're both pure. I'm just putting them on their original status. What was your original status? He asked the Nazir. Well, I was always pure. He said, well, we don't know that you're tamei now either because it's a public area. He said, well, let's assume that you're pure. The other guy shows up. He says, what was your original status? I was pure before. He says, well, we don't know if you touched it, so you consider yourself pure. Now, even though that's an impossibility, but since I'm not learning from Saita, so that's fine. So the Gemara had this question. So why don't we just consider them both pure? So, but now when the Gemara says no, it's a private area, the Gemara is not asking. So let's learn from Saita, and they should for sure be tamei because that's an impossibility. That's what Taisa says here. He says he explains this at length in the first page of Masechtas Nida. It's a long Taisa discusses it. Okay.
Reasoning. Because the analogy isn't really apply one set of principles to the private and another to the public.
Right.
They're not really comparing.
Right. That's what comes out from this. That it's not balanced. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Dekanami, I'll prove it to you. That we're talking about where the person wasn't even there. Dekanami, because it says, I don't know which one of you. That means that he was probably at a distance and he was watching from a distance.
It has to be. Because if he's up close, A, he would know who it was, and B is now
So he's saying that it has to be a Rosh Yachid. And the fact that he didn't say that I knew who it was, but I just forgot which one, that means that he wasn't there either. And my only question is if he's watching, that should make it a Rosh Hashanah. Maybe the pshat here is because by the Saita, someone watching would make it a Rosh Hashanah. Maybe the pshat is over here is that I was on the third floor and I dropped a corpse. I dropped down a corpse. something, and I know it fell under the roof where one of you was. I don't know which one it was, but I wasn't there either. So maybe that's the something that he knows that someone was Tom. Maybe he doesn't know which one. He wasn't even watching either. Maybe it'd have to be like that. Okay. The next Gemara, Megalchen Mevian, they have to shave their head and they bring the sacrifices. The problem is like this. Why do we allow this? Maybe they're not tamei. And whenever you shave your head, you're also shaving the payas and you're shaving the beard. It's a prohibition. If the person is really obligated to, because either it's the end of his Nazirus, or it's because he's tamei, then he has to shave his head and start again, granted. But one of them over here is not doing it properly, because one of them was pure the whole time. He's only supposed to shave his head once. Now he's coming along and shaving his head twice. There's a prohibition in there, right? Not to shave hakafa means not to make a circle around the head, which means to cut off the payas. Shmuel says, remember that a Nazir, yeah, that's going to come up in a second. Can't cut the payas. But the Shmuel says, remember that a Nazir could also be a woman, could be a Nazira. Remember that a Nazir could also be a child from 12 years old, a boy that's 12, even before Bar Mitzvah. Because when he takes a vow, we consider his vows as binding. Because we're talking about the Isha V'Katan, talking about a child, or it's a woman or a child. And that's why there's no prohibition of shaving, because they're not obligated in that law. They're only obligated in the law of Nazirus, if it's a cotton. But not in the prohibition of shaving the head, because the woman, first of all, is allowed to, and a child is too young that it should be a prohibition. It's the mitzvah of chinuch, but this would push off that, the mitzvah of chinuch. That's only rabbinic. Okay. Gemara says, "V'lukma begadol." Why don't you say it's an adult? Ba'kafas koloresh leishmi akafa. When do we say that there's a prohibition to the rounding of the head? That's only if you just cut off the payas and you leave the top. But over here, he's cutting everything off. Maybe it should be fine. Since the Gemara doesn't say this, obviously Shmuel holds that it's not just rounding the head and leaving the top, like what they call a mushroom. That's not the only prohibition. The prohibition, even if you shave everything. What are you laughing about? The term mushroom?
Yeah, oh yeah, mushroom top. That's what they call you,
There
sir.
was a discussion about mushrooms. That's what I'm laughing about. Not for a family here.
Oh,
It
no.
is involved the discussion.
Okay. Marzutra. Masnila la Shmaita the Shmuel Sefer. Marzutra says that yes, Shmuel did mention this, that we're talking about a woman and a child. That was Shmuel's statement. But he didn't say it about what we're talking about now, that we're talking about the Nazir that became Tameh and they have to shave his head. Not about that. He was talking about something else. He was talking about Nazir Sheyat Tameh B'Safek and Muchlet B'Safek. Really, it's the last, it's a discussion in the last chapter, and it's also going to be over here coming up. We are, remember we quoted this case where they have to wait either 60 days just to be able to bring to eat from a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have to wait another 60 days, 120 days in total to drink the wine and to cut there. So Marzutra says in that case, Shmuel said, one second, Hakafas Kalareish, I'm sorry, Shmuel says, which is a Nazir Tamei B'Safek Muchlet B'Safek, and the Nazir was questionable if he was Tamei, questionable if he was a Mitzayra. After 60 days, he's able to eat from sacrifices, because he's for sure not a mitzvah anymore. And he's not tamei either, but he didn't do his naziris for the tumah. So an eichel bekachim lachashishim yam magalech dalet teglaches. He has to wait. He has to do 4 haircuts. Problem is 4 haircuts. We don't even know if he needed one of them. Well, he needed only one. We don't know the other 3 because of the mitzvah. Well, we weren't even sure if he was a mitzvah or not. We weren't even sure if he was tummy or not. So, but there's a prohibition over there of cutting the hair, and you're not allowed to cut the payas. No, in that case, Shmuel says we should cut them. Shmuel says we're talking about a woman or a child, and that's why it's permissible. Okay, the following Gemara, interesting machlekes. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, "Makif esakatan ariyav chayiv." An adult man is not allowed to shave the head of a child. He's going to get lashes if he cuts off the child's payas. Now, even though the child doesn't have the obligation, because the child is underage, but the adult was prohibited from doing that. Because the adult is prohibited, you're not allowed to cut the sides, the payas of the head. You can't round the head. And this adult rounded the head. It wasn't his own head, it was the child's, but it was a prohibition. Right. Right. Over there he does it on your behalf. It's similar. He says that when it says you shouldn't cut off payas, it's referring to a child as well. And the person cut off the child's payas. Look at this. Amalei Ravada Barava LeRav Huna. Ravada Barava says to Rav Huna, "V'didachman megalechlein." So who's cutting the payas off your own children? Says if you hold that you're not allowed to. So who's cutting? I noticed your children in the store, in the school, or whatever. They didn't have payas. Who's cutting them? Amalei Chayva. He says, my wife Chayva.
Had to be the answer.
Well, Ravada Barava doesn't go for that. And he says, Tekbarino Chayva Labana. Chayva should bury your children.
Whoa,
easy.
Now, Rav Huna held that a woman was never commanded on the rules of cutting payas. She's allowed to cut her own payas, of course. She's allowed to cut other people's. A man, Rav Huna held, is not allowed to cut his own or other people's, including a child. Ravada Barava holds that a woman is not allowed to cut anyone's payas. Ravada Barava holds that. Now, when he hears Rav Huna says that his wife is doing it, so he says, but that's not allowed.
Children.
Right. Now, on the other hand, Taisus points out that really Ravada Barava has a more lenient opinion than Rav Huna, because Ravada Barava really holds that even an adult is allowed to cut the child's payas. What he's telling Rav Huna is that a woman is not allowed to cut an adult's payas, adult man's payas. But regarding the child, even an adult would be allowed to cut it. So there's 2 machlekes in here. It's very interesting. There's 2 machlekes. Rav Huna holds that an adult man cannot cut a child's payas. However, a woman can cut not only a child's payas, but an adult's payas, because a woman was never commanded on payas. Ravada Barava is exactly the opposite. He holds that a woman is not allowed to cut an adult's payas because she can't cut a man that's obligated to have payas. On the other hand, though, an adult man or a woman would be allowed to cut a child's payas because the child isn't obligated to have payas. So when he tells Rav Huna that who cut your child's payas, Rav Ada bar Abba holds that it could have been Rav Huna would be allowed to. He was just surprised that Rav Huna says that he's not allowed to. He says, if you're not allowed to, then who does it? He says, my wife. He says, your wife, but your wife has the same prohibition that you would have. And if you hold that you're not allowed to, then your wife should also not be. And Rav Huna says, no, I'm not allowed to, but my wife is. That's the story. Well, all the years of Rav Ada bar Abba, Rav Huna did not have children, or they didn't survive. Why? It was the curse. Kishkaga sheyatzel lifnei hashalet, right? Like a mistake that came out from the ruler. It's michti. The Gemara asks, Tavayu svira. What's the Gemara? Tavayu svira lahu. They both hold hakafas kolaresh me'akafa. That cutting the whole head is considered cutting the payas. In other words, it doesn't have to be just the payas, even if everything is cut. My kamif, so what here is the machlekes? Rav Huna Sava, Rav Huna holds leisa kifu pasur sheichem leisashkas es pasuk kanecha. Huna holds that you're not allowed to cut the payas, you're not allowed to cut the beard. You can't destroy the beard. Kol sheyesh le'ashchasa yesh le'akafa. Anyone that's prohibited from cutting the beard is also prohibited from cutting the payas. Bahani nashi, but these women, since women don't have any prohibition of cutting the beard, less than nami ba'akafa, they don't have any prohibition of cutting payas. Therefore, the women can cut the child's payas. They could even cut an adult's payas. Obviously, the adult won't be able to assist. Rav Ada bar Abba says no. When it says that you're not allowed to cut, it's referring to both the one that's cutting and both the one that's being cut, which means that a woman would not be allowed to cut someone that's prohibited from having his payas cut, whether it's active or passive, right? The iskish makif lenikif, and we make a comparison. Kol hechad lenikif machayev. Whenever the one that his payas is being cut is an obligation, there's a prohibition there. So makif nami machayev, then the woman or whoever it is also chayev. You can't cut anyone that is obligated to have payas. By katan, but this child, hayel v'hu gufei la barayin shenu the mechayev. Right. A little bit more than that. I think it's active or passive. The person, you're not allowed to cut payas, you're not allowed to have payas cut. So this child, since since the child is not obligated to have payas, so makafnami lemechayev, then the person that cuts his payas wouldn't be obligated. It was only a question on Rav Huna, that Rav Huna held that you weren't allowed to cut a child's payas. And so therefore he said that it was a woman, but Rav Ada bar Abba doesn't agree with that.
This minor is exempt. It's not the bear doesn't go on the father or anything.
According to him, it doesn't. Since the minor is exempt, so the one that cuts the payas is also exempt. Okay, let's leave the Gemara over here.
Woo! Oh, wow. Good end point.
Have a good day, everyone.
So we didn't finish that tomorrow?
Good day, good day.
Good day, everyone.
Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
very much.
Chaim, how are you?
Thank you. Have a good day. Shkoyach.
Have a good day.
I've been having need a knee replacement, Rabbi.
Oh, and do you have one scheduled?
No, not yet. I have to program it. It's not easy. It's been having it for the last 6 months, so.
Yeah.
The knee is not the problem, the problem is the back pain that goes from it.
Uh-huh.
Push Lema.
I mean, I need it.
Well, okay. Should be well. Okay, have a good day.